So in this session of videos, ultimately I'll take you through setting up a good skeleton and a rig for this character called Frankie. We will look at referencing and how to really set up a watertight skeleton and rig it ready to animate it and go in game engines. So this is an overview of the session on joints, and ultimately there are two areas that you need to consider when setting up joints. Firstly, that all the joints are consistently aligned, that have the same orientation. So if I select that joint and go to display, transform display, local rotation axis, I'll do the same. I've actually got a shortcut here, local rotation axis, local rotation axis, and I'll just hide the geometry. The geometry seems to get in the way. You can see that my joints have a consistent alignment, and that is that X is pointing down the joint chain, Z is going off to the left, and Y is coming forward. So these are all consistent for the joints in each of the hierarchy chains. So the hierarchy chains are arms, legs, even torso. Okay. So also I'm just going to shift select these and bring in the local rotation axes, and as you can see they're all consistent. Z is facing this way, X is always pointing down or up the joint chain, and this Y is facing backwards. Okay, so that's something that no matter what joint chain you set up, let me do the same for the legs just to show you, and display local rotation axes. Okay, there you can see Z is always facing to the left, Y is forward, so it's consistent down that joint chain. Now that's something that you should absolutely adhere to when setting up skeletons, is making sure that consistency is there, and that there's no joint within the hierarchy of that chain that's facing the wrong direction. Okay. Now why should this matter? Personally, I'm a real believer that when rigging, you absolutely have to be so thorough and double check everything and double check it again to make sure you don't get stray values or errors, or rotate the joints are rotated in some odd way. Basically because as soon as errors start in the fundamental level of building skeletons, those errors will get compounded as you go through, and rigging can take quite a lot of effort, and you could be building in errors all along the way. So the first thing is when building skeletons is make sure that the rotations are all aligned. Okay, and when I select these torso joints, okay, I'll not select that base one. So if I go to rotate and rotate them all, I get a nice bend because all the joints are rotated in the same way. Okay, now that wouldn't happen if any of those joints was in a different rotation. Okay, so that's why it's important that way. You get consistent behavior and predictable behavior, specifically in FK chains. Now secondly, after you've sorted out the orientation, is generally when you get a joint chain, the top of the joint chain, in this case the arm, has translate values. okay, and they're generally x, y, z, and those translate values. If I zero it out, it should go back to its parent. So those translate values are literally the offset to its parent. Okay, so if, just as a test, if I zero those out, as you can see, it's gone back to the parent. Okay, now you will always get 3 values if the top of that hierarchy is not in line with the joint chain. So you can see here from this parent, it's kind of gone down in this value, gone across, and it's also gone backwards as well. So that's why you get those 3 translate values. Same for the leg. These translate x, y, z values are the values which are offset from its parent. So again, if I zero those out, it goes back to the parent there. So that just gives you an understanding where those values come from. It's generally the offset position from the parent. Okay, that's always the top of the chain. Now, when you come down the chain, and the chain has always with hinge joints like legs, elbows and torso, the plane should be consistent. So if I look down the joint, they're all aligned in that plane, and that makes good IK and a good skeleton and rig all round. Okay, so as I move down the hierarchy, if those joints are in line, the only value I should be seeing is translate x. There absolutely should be no rotation values, absolutely not scale values, just translate x. And literally what that value is, if I middle drag that back to 0, as I go back to 0, it's going back to its parent. Okay? So literally, I'll just undo that, you'll see the same for the next joint. It is just literally the distance to its parent, so it's the distance between the joints. Same for the toe, the ankle, same for the toe. So all the children should only ever have translate x, and this is what we're going to go through in the following video series, is look at both how to align joints correctly so that they all face a consistent way, and how to set up a good joint chain so that the only values that you get are just translate x in all the children. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at in the following series of videos.